Well, I think a lot of people who know you will sort of be aware of you and everything you're doing just over the last few years as you've come to more prominence and become a public figure. But I'm always curious with any guest that I have on or anyone I'm speaking to who's achieved success in something, I'm always curious to go way back and find out more about their life journey. So tell me more about your growing up. What was Alex Hormozi like as a kid and through school?
I was an only child for the first half. Then my dad remarried, and then I had two step siblings. I was pretty much just raised by my dad for the most part. So I was a pretty quiet kid. Just did my homework, did my sports. Kind of kept to myself for the most part. Once I got into middle school, that was really tough for me. Getting to high school, I started to I went through puberty kind of earlier. So I had muscles. There's pictures of me on the internet. I was pretty fit. And I had pretty good genes for that stuff. And so that's actually what kind of got me into fitness. Was I had a teacher who was like, "Hey," he's like, "You lift?" And I was like, "No." He said, "You've got the genes." He's like, I'll show you after school if you want. So I went with this guy after school, and he showed me how to work out during my freshman year of high school. And I looked like I worked out. And that kind of set a little bit of the direction of my life. That kind of got me into what I would consider my relatively angry phase of my life.
Okay.
Late high school, early college, I had a very woe is me outlook on life. I felt like I'd been wronged. Whether it's true or not is kind of irrelevant. But that was how I perceived the world at that point.
What did you feel you were wronged about?
Who knows, teenage angst. But, I felt like I had a bone to pick with both my parents in general. The classic feelings of being misunderstood, not giving your liberty, having approval from parents withheld from you despite, at least for me, I tried very hard to gain the approval of my parents. And so, I was on 3 varsity sports teams. I was the editor-in-chief of the literary magazine, the vice editor of the newspaper. I was in shape. I tried to do everything I could. But I didn't think that I felt like it was the goalpost continued to move. And that's fine because at the end of the day, where I am today, I'm grateful for who I am. And I can blame them both for that. But coming up, I definitely didn't have the perspective I think that I do now. And so I was an angrier kid, and that was kind of it. And everything kind of broke through for me around 19-ish.
Okay.
I had this psychology course that I was taking in college, and we had to write an essay about someone we knew who had a mental disorder or something, because it was psychology. So you had to pick something and then tell the story of how they could have potentially gone in that direction from their perspective. So it's a really interesting assignment. And I wrote about my mother, and in so doing, one of my favorite quotes, Pascal is, and he was the mathematician, Pascal's triangle, Blaise Pascal. He was also a Christian theologian, so it's kind of interesting. And he said, "To understand is to forgive." And so when I wrote my mother's story from the fact that she was, born in France, came here when she was 4, got beat up as a kid because she didn't speak English, the classic, and this was, before it was frowned upon to beat up foreigners.
We've progressed in some ways.
Yeah, we've progressed. You're right. And so anyways, and I was thinking about that, and her father was a super immigrant from Serbia. And so, you have a Serbian man who escaped the Nazis with his family, comes here, builds a life for himself, and, kicks them up out of bed no matter what every morning, just militant. And that's okay because that's, he realized the opportunity they had. But I was going through this and thinking, it makes sense that she had some, she is this way, right? And so all of a sudden I remember coming back from college and seeing her, and I didn't see her that much beforehand, anyways. And I remember, I don't know, she mouthed off at me for something. And I just remember this kind of very disarming moment being like, I can't be angry with you. And then she just looked at me, I was like, I get it. I get it. It was tough.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. And then she just burst into tears and, and it was a nice moment there. But so that was a big life lesson for me. It was most of the times if I'm angry, it means I don't fully understand the situation. or both people's contexts. And so I think that was kind of a big breakthrough for me as a person, because I was like, this person that I've like held all this anger towards, if I understood more, my anger came from ignorance.
Yep.
And so that's been a frame that I've tried to approach situations. And when I start feeling angry about something, I'm like, what do I not understand? And that kind of helps me diffuse those things. And so I think over time that's helped me in business scenarios and business settings make better decisions.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're all human. We all have emotions, but the degree to which we allow the emotions to affect our decisions, I think is the thing that we have some level of control over.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's powerful. And I think that of all emotions and feelings people can have, I think resentment is one of the most deadly ones.
Yeah.
Both for yourself and for other people. I think it's so limiting. And I think there are so many people in this world, sometimes with good reason, right, who feel and harbor resentment towards other people within their family, people they've met, people who wronged them when they were in school 20, 30, 40 years ago, sometimes even their own spouse or their own children, whatever it is. And it just eats people up. And it's such an impediment, because if you are angry, I mean, there are times when you can use anger as a motivator if you channel it well to go on and do something successful. But it can be disruptive and destructive, and it manifests in all these sort of different ways. And I just think there's so many people in this world right now walking around with that within them. Yeah. You see it offline, you see it online. Just that person who, you post a video of you working out, and they're like mad at it. And it's like, I'm like, why are you angry? Why are you lashing out at someone posting a video or a photo of them in the gym? And it's like, all right, there's something I'm not trying to psychoanalyze everyone, but I'm like, man, there's something going on in the background there, and you're not angry at this person, but there's something here that's like triggering you. So you had this breaking point at 19 where you really shifted your mindset. Were you already an entrepreneur at this time in any sort of way?
I was in zero ways was I an entrepreneur at this point.
Okay.
So yeah, at that point, I kind of got my shit together. Darn.
Got my
stuff together. And I started cleaning up my act. So I had been kind of like a party boy leading into that. So I just always was out drinking, always partying, always just chasing after girls. And then at that point, I was like, I need to take life seriously, because this is my track is not good. And so I kind of applied the same thing that I was doing in high school from an achievement perspective back in college. And then I did well the last 2 years, because I graduated in 3. And kind of followed the path. Got a job as a management consultant, which was, at least for me, it was investment banker, management consultant. The primary reason was they made the most money. Yep. And so that's why I picked it.
I used to be a management consultant as well.
Oh yeah, where?
Yeah. Accenture.
Okay. Yeah. No, we were a subcontractor under Booz Allen, so it was defense contracting, public sector stuff. Anywho, in a past life, I had a top secret clearance and all that fun stuff that came with it. It sounds only cool to say.
Yeah.
But did that for 2 years, realized I didn't really enjoy the work, and that was when I got really depressed. It was a very hard time in my life at that point, because I felt like I had done everything I was supposed to do, and it hadn't resulted in what I had hoped. And so at this point, I had moved back home. So I went to school, away from home, went back home.
Where was home at this point, by the way?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
And so went back home, had this job, and I'd done at this point everything that my father had wanted me to do, and it was his approval that I was seeking. And the thing is like I had his approval, but it didn't hit the way I wanted it to. And so what I realized was I didn't have my own approval. And so in realizing that, as at least for me, the source of my depression was that I was not proud of who I was, because I did not feel like I was free. Because I felt like I had made a lot of the decisions I had made up to that point in my life because of expectations of other people that I was trying to meet.
Got it.
And so having met those expectations and not met my own, I felt a big discrepancy. And so it was about 6 months of me going back and forth of like, I really want to get into fitness. I really want to start my own business. And I'd always call my dad up and he'd be like, give it time, go to, whatever. And so then I was in the process of applying to business school and, do your 2 years and then you do that whole game. And the first question for Harvard's, for HBS was, how will Harvard Business School MBA help your short and long-term goals? And I stared at the question for like 3 days. And I realized for me, it didn't, because I wanted to ultimately start a business. And so I thought about, okay, well, $180,000 plus the opportunity cost of time. versus what I can learn in 2 years, not spending $180,000 and making money during that period of time. And I looked at the average incomes after HBS was like between 120 and 180, and I was like, I think I could figure that out.
Yeah.
And so I still didn't get my dad's approval, and so I ended up actually driving across the country from Baltimore without telling anyone. And I called my dad halfway across the drive, being like, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to be doing this thing." And he was like, "Just come over. We'll have lunch. We'll talk about it." And I was like, "I'm in Ohio," and then he kind of like snapped, rightfully so, I guess. And we had a pretty hard time for the next 5 years.
Okay.
Didn't really talk too much to either of my parents because I was just trying to run this gym. And so that's when I went to California and started a gym without knowing anybody, which was honestly not as scary as it should have been because I was ignorant.
Okay.
But I do remember when I was sleeping on the floor of the gym and I was reading those motivation manifestos, it was not as cool as I thought it was going to be. Because like you want credit for the Rocky cutscene, but when you're in the Rocky cutscene, it's a lot longer than 30 seconds.
Oh yeah.
And so, I'm sleeping in a warehouse where there's cars that drive over the top of it, and there's these metal partitions and this concrete box. It was like, and it would sound like a gunshot.
Yeah.
And so I was sleeping there, and so I'd wake up every hour of the night to new cars driving over it. And I pretty much like didn't sleep for the first like 6 to 9 months of me being in business because I would wake up at 4. The first people show up at 4:30 in the morning, teach all the sessions, which ended at 10. Then I would work the leads that came in overnight and clean the gym, set up the workouts for the afternoon. First people would show up at 4 until 8 taught sessions. And then I would do my sales consults from 8 until 10, meeting with people. And then from 10 o'clock until I couldn't keep my eyes open, I'd run credit cards, do the billing and all that kind of stuff. And then I'd wake up again at 4. And so it's just kind of this blur of life for me at that time. And I honestly don't think I would have been able to get through it if it hadn't been for the amount of resentment I had for my parents at that point.